I used to work as a construction worker and engineer in the Philadelphia area in my early 20s. My co-workers and I would do basic work like constructing add-ons to already standing structures like adding basements to buildings. One of our jobs in 2012 was to construct a small basement area and extend the main floor for a coroner dentist building. The basement was to have a bathroom and 2 big storage areas. We were making serious progress by the time of the story. We had working lights in the basement already. The basement had just been sealed off, so there was no longer a big hole in the ground. And since the lights were working down there, we had a source of light while we worked down there at night. One of my co-workers, Jordan, went upstairs and then outside to help with work on the add-on section outside. I was tinkering with the electrical components a bit. I was no electrician, but I had a basic understanding of what I was doing. But suddenly the power went out. I knew it had nothing to do with what I was doing. I figured there must have been a power outage in the vicinity. The 4 of us didn't keep our phones on us due to the nature of our jobs, plus how dirty our hands would get. We all kept them in our jackets that we hung upstairs, but luckily, one of the tools we kept in our vests were flashlights. Before I could even reach and grab for my flashlight, though I started to hear a rattling noise, the closest way I could come to describing it was a bag of coins being shaken, not exactly but close enough. It seemed to come from inside the tiny, soon-to-be bathroom. I took the flashlight out from the pouch on my vest, turned it on, and aimed it towards the bathroom section. We had already put up a door, and it was slightly closed to be covering my view from the actual room itself. It didn't sound like any kind of infrastructural sound, so I had to imagine it was one of my co-workers. I went to the door, and as I writhed my hand around the side of the door, I waited a second before pulling it open just because I needed to gather my bearings. But when I did swing open that door, my flashlight revealed some person dressed in all black, standing face in the corner of the tiny room so that I couldn't see their face. That is until the person turned their head like a deer reacting to a sound in the woods. All I saw through the flashlight was the glow in their eyes. I slammed the door shut and ran up the stairs in my heavy boots looking for my co-workers. They were all outside, apparently about ready to pack up and call it a night since the power in all the nearby buildings had gone out. I counted 3 of my co-workers, so it couldn't have been any of them in that tiny room. I asked all of them if anybody else who worked in that building had been there at all that night. They all shook their heads no, so at this point, I had to lead them downstairs to show them the creepy stranger in the basement. They followed me to the basement and to the tiny room, and as I feared would happen, that person I saw wasn't in there anymore, or in the entire basement for that matter. I was obviously embarrassed when they didn't believe me, but I wasn't going to hold them hostage and make them believe me. So we all went back outside and packed up. I was the one with the key to the building, so I had to lock up when everyone left. After getting into my car and seeing the others drive off, I can't describe it, but I got a feeling inside of me that made me want to go back down into that basement and check one more time for that person I was sure that I saw. I took a deep breath, unlocked the door to the building, and went back down to the basement. The power was too loud, so I walked down the stairs with 2 flashlights on, the one I was using before, and now my phone as well. I made it to the bottom step and then stopped. The dead silence in this cramped, unfinished basement, made with the fact that I was anticipating a sound, freaked me out to the point that I was about to turn around and go back upstairs. When suddenly I heard the rattling again, coming from the tiny room again. I didn't even look, but when I heard it, I felt my heart in my throat, and I stormed up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut again, and locked the door to the building, and drove home. Thank God it was a Saturday, so I wouldn't have to be back until Monday. I made sure not to work in that basement alone anymore. However, and thankfully we finished the work within a couple weeks, and nothing else really strange ever happened. It was a normal night in the cold month of February. My wife and I were watching a late-night movie in our room in bed before going to sleep. At some point in the movie, the TV suddenly shut off and the room went dark. My wife and I let out simultaneous grunts in annoyance. The lamps, clocks, everything went out. So the power must have gone out. I told my wife I'd go outside and check if the neighbors lost power too. I opened the front door and stepped out onto the stoop for only a second or two because it was freezing outside, but I could see lights on in the neighbors' houses. So it seemed to be just us who lost power. We have the fuse box in a small boiler-type room in our basement. It seemed unlikely it could have anything to do with that, but I had to give it a shot. I had no idea what else I could do. I went downstairs with a flashlight. One weird thing about our house is, you have to walk down the stairs to get to the basement door. Like the door is literally on the basement level. I was tired, so I kind of slowly and lazily stomped down the steps. When I got to the basement door at the bottom, I turned the doorknob and tried opening the door. It wouldn't push open though. I tried a little harder, but it still wouldn't budge. My wife must have locked it. I went all the way back upstairs to ask my wife where she put the basement key. She got out of bed and said she'd get it for me. I followed her downstairs to the kitchen, where we had a key hanger. She flipped around the many keys until she pulled off the basement key and handed it to me. She then went back upstairs to the bedroom, while I went back down the stairs to the basement door. I put the key in the lock and turned it to the right, then tried opening the door again, but it still wouldn't open. I went back up the stairs and called for my wife to come down. When she did, I asked for help like a child. Since she was the only one to ever lock this door, she came down the stairs with a flashlight making fun of me for not being able to use a wooden door, and before she even tried using the key, she turned the doorknob and gave one good push, and the door creaked open. I was dumbfounded. I swore up and down the door wouldn't open. Then I joked that I loosened it up for her. Once again, she went upstairs to the bedroom. I entered the basement, flicking the light switch on, which only led to more darkness, flashlights still in hand. I went to the boiler room. When I got inside of there, I tinkered with all the switches, flipping them from one side to the other, until finally the lights in the basement flicked on. I was relieved. I shut the tiny door to the fuse box. Just then, however, there was a sound from outside of the boiler room, the sound of one of the basement closet doors creaking. I took a peek outside at both of the doors. One was closed, the other was slightly cracked open. My heart started beating faster as I went over to the door. I stood about 2 feet away from that door, listening. For some reason. It took until then for me to think, why, how would the switch in our fuse box for power be switched off all of a sudden? Then I started to think, what if the basement door was never locked? What if someone was simply pulling it shut? After a few moments of silence, I heard a deep exhale in the closet. I took off for the stairs, this time making sure to lock the door behind me. I'd never run up a flight of stairs so quickly in my life. I ran to our bedroom and yelled and distressed my wife. I was not acting like the man of the house at all. I'll admit I was too afraid. I did call the police though. At some point after the phone call, before the police arrived, we heard the sound of glass breaking outside. I looked out my window, but it was too dark to see anything in the backyard. When the police arrived, I led them quickly to the basement, but by then, the closet door was completely open and it was empty. We also noticed shattered glass in one corner of the basement and things knocked all over the floor. Whoever was in the closet managed to climb up a ledge where we keep collectibles, smash the window, and climb up out of the basement to the outside. In other words, they escaped and were never caught. That night, we kept the basement and living room lights on all night and locked every door in the house. The next day, we have the glass fixed. We don't even live in a bad neighborhood, so it's really scary to think that something like this could happen to basically anyone. I work as a janitor at a commuter college campus. I won't disclose for my own privacy and safety. A job entails cleaning the hallways, classrooms, and bathrooms of varying buildings on campus. Usually I work late hours in the day, like 1 o'clock to 9 o'clock, when the campus is less crowded. There was a stormy night in the summer that I was working. The college offers summer courses, obviously, so yes, I work in the summer too. This was during one of the biggest storms we've had that year. Extreme winds mixed with a torrential downpour. It was later in my shift, anywhere from 7 to 8 o'clock. I was currently in the activity center hall, which didn't hold any classes, just a big ballroom, a small theater, and varying classroom type rooms used for general purposes. It was usually one of the quieter buildings on campus, apart from when events were being held in it. I very well may have been the only person in that building at that hour. I was cleaning in the downstairs section of the building. It shelled the game room, when suddenly the whole place went dark, like pitch black, except for the red glow of an exit sign near the doorway to the stairs. The power shortly went out. I took out my phone and called one of the other janitors who was working in another building. He told me that power went out in his building too, which meant the whole campus probably lost power due to the storm. After hanging up, I figured my job down there was done, so I followed the glove to the exit sign, but nearly shit myself when I saw someone peeking their head from around the stairway. I called out thinking it was maybe someone who worked in the building, but before I could even really say anything, they disappeared upstairs. I ran to the stairway to try and follow, given that I would have to most likely lock up the building now and had to make sure everyone was outside. Quite frankly, when I got upstairs, I didn't know what to do in the total darkness. There were very few backup lights that were still laid in case of blackouts, and they were very, very dim, only lighting up basically a little around their immediate surroundings. I started calling out in the dark, seemingly empty building that I had to close up. Everyone and anyone must get out. The hallway in this building did one big circle around the big ballroom, and backup lights were distributed throughout the hallway. However, like I said, they were far between and extremely dim. I started doing my round through the hallway, and I was pretty sure I heard footsteps behind me. I turned when I was under one of the backup lights, but I didn't see anything behind me. I continued around the hallway checking each room. When I checked the last bathroom and found no one, I figured the building was empty and safe to lock up. Walking to the front of the building, I heard footsteps again. This time I knew someone had to be behind me. I turned and saw a silhouette standing in the dark just beyond one of the dim lights. I called out that you have to leave the building, but the way they were standing there just made me uncomfortable. And just then, they turned and ran the other way out of sight. I didn't know what to do, but chasing someone and physically removing them from the building was above my pay grade. I continued the front door planning by calling campus police. When I got to the front door of the building, I turned back to the darkness that was the lobby of this building, and about 20 feet away from me, I saw that silhouette again. There's time hiding behind a half-open door. I say silhouette because all I could see was a black figure. I didn't see anybody or facial features. I left the building and called the campus police. A couple of them came to check out the building, but they couldn't find anyone. Later that night, I got a disturbing phone call. It was campus police. They asked me to describe the person I saw the best I could, but I truly couldn't. I couldn't see anything about them. Then they dropped a bomb and told me there was a killer in the area who was in hiding and was spotted by a local resident near the college campus. When I hung up the phone, I felt a shiver ran up my spine. I didn't get much sleep that night. I also didn't feel safe working for a while after that. Do you have any memories from when you were a little kid that just make you uncomfortable to think about? Especially since you were so young at the time that you didn't know any better. Well, this is mine. My mom used to take me to this really big playground in my town. And when I say really big, I'm not exaggerating. It was probably the biggest playground you'd ever see. If only I knew the name of it. The playground was entirely wooden, and every Saturday and Sunday, there would be at least 50 kids playing across it, with the parents all tucked away in the shaded area, reading their magazines and whatnot. One typical busy day at the playgrounds, I was running along a big open platform when an older woman stopped me and said, "Hi." She kept going on and on about how cute I was and how she loved my blonde hair. It started to seem like she knew me based on the way she was talking to me. And then she told me that my mom left and that she told her to take me home. Keep in mind I was only 6, so I believed her. The woman took me to the parking lot to an old station wagon where a man, I now presumed to be her husband, was sitting in the driver's seat. He acted all friendly to me as the woman motioned me into the back seat, but I remember him yelling and lecturing at her about something. The man drove very aggressively and quickly as he was leaving the parking lot. We came to the light at the exit of the park. It was red. Just then a car pulled up behind us and laid on the horn. I looked behind us, and it was my mom's car. The man blew through the red light, which even I picked up on, and started flooring it down the streets. I started to cry and scream as I realized my mom didn't know these people. Not long after, the man pulled the car over and yelled at the top of his lungs at me to get out of the car. I opened the door, still crying my eyes out in fear. My mom pulled up next to me, ran out of the car, and hugged me. In the heat of the moment, she didn't get the tag number, nor was she able to call the police, since this was 2001 and there were no cell phones. I really wish I didn't remember this day so clearly. I would have rather had just been one of those memories that the brain chooses to repress. When I was 17 in my last year of high school, I was finally starting to hit things off with a girl I liked. I'll call her Lynn. Lynn was a big pot smoker. At the time, it really wasn't my thing, but I went along with it just because I live a couple blocks from her, so I always walked before I got a car. Across the street from her house is a park. Commonly at night, she'd instant message me on AOL to come hang out at the park. Sometimes we just sit on the playground at night and talk for hours. Sometimes she convinced me to smoke with her. It was always such a private place to hang out and talk, especially at night. A line of thick trees surrounded the playground as well, creating a wall of sorts. Well, one night, we both snuck out around 12 and met at the playground in the park. We talked for a while. Then Lynn perked up, playfully hit me on the shoulder, and said we should play hide and seek. It may sound immature for a couple seniors in high school to play hide and seek, but it just seemed like it would be fun. She told me to go to the trees and count to 30. When I was done, my first instinct was, of course, to check the playground, and if she wasn't there, I'd move on to the picnic match area. We always had flashlights on us when we went to the park, because this was before everyone had phones with flashlights in their pockets. I stepped from the grass onto the wood fiber mulch surrounding the playgrounds. I aimed my flashlight up to the playgrounds because I guess I was too lazy to go out there if I didn't have to. You know those big plastic circular things with a bunch of tiny holes in it that a lot of playgrounds have? Maybe not, but there was one of those things up at the highest level of the playgrounds, and through a bunch of holes, I could see what appeared to be skin and a jacket. But what stood out the most was her eye peering through one of the holes. Instead of going up there right away, I decided it would be fun to kind of mess with her. I waved the flashlight around the playground, pretending like I didn't see her. I was gonna walk to the picnic area, turn on the flashlight, walk around to the trees, back to the playgrounds, sneak up on her, and scare the living daylights out of her. Don't ask me why. I just wanted to. I walked to the picnic area, shut off the flashlight, and snuck back over to the playgrounds. I was careful not to make noise as they cried through the wood chips that the playground sat on. Before I could even step foot on the first platform of the playground, something grabbed my arm and pulled me. I actually screamed, but stopped when I heard the wind's laughter. I turned on the flashlight and was relieved to see it was her. The prank obviously backfired completely. After that, we went back up to the second level platform of the playground, that we always chill there. I asked her if she knew that I saw her behind that plastic thing at the top of the playground, but she was confused. She acted as if she never went up there. I explained to her that I saw someone up there. We both looked up as the tiny creaking sounds we had been hearing every so often suddenly made a disturbing amount of sense. I aimed the light up there, which revealed someone's head hunched over the railing of the platform above us. At the same time, we heard footsteps kicking the wood chips around right below the platform we were sitting on. I made the first move for us to run, and Lynn followed suit. I turned out my flashlight while we ran, which wasn't long since Lynn's house was right across the street. We went to her room, shut the curtains, and I stayed there for the night, not wanting to go home. That marked the end of our late-night visits to the park. I'm a single father, currently living with my 5-year-old son. I have an old wooden playground in my backyard. It has a tire swing monkey bars and a big slide. Recently, a couple of times I've heard noises coming from the playground at night. I'll start from the first night. I woke up one night last week to the sound of something squeaking from outside. I recognized it to be the sound of the rusty chain of the tire swing spinning around. I also heard a young child's laughter out there. I thought it was my son, so I went to his room to find him in his bed, fast asleep. My heart dropped as I saw him in his bed. That meant some stranger was in my yard, but when I opened the back door to the backyard, there was no one back there. The tire swing was spinning slowly. However, as if somebody had just gotten off of it, I trucked it up with some kid just sneaking into my yard and went back to sleep. The next night, I woke up again to the sound of someone stomping up and down the slide, once again accompanied by the sound of a child's laughter. I checked my son's room once again to find him in bed. This time I thought I'd be a little smarter about it and checked the window first before going outside. Nothing was out there though, not on the playground at least. I still went outside anyway, just to make sure. For a couple nights nothing happened, and I completely forgot about it. But on the third night while in bed, a knock at my window startled me. I sat up and was shocked for a good minute, afraid to look outside. But eventually I was brave enough to do so. I looked out the foggy window. Through the smudge, I could see both the swings, on the swing set swinging lightly, accompanied with the laughter of a child again. I ran as fast as I could down those stairs and out the back door. But instead of finding a couple of deviant little kids back there, instead I saw some towering figure looming at the top of my playground, surely looking at me. My courage turned to pure cowardice as I turned to run back inside, lock the door, and dial 911. The wait for an officer to arrive was the longest 20 minutes I'd ever experienced. By the time they got there, though, the figure on the playground was gone. They took down what little information I could give them and left. I wish I could say that was the last occurrence. But just last night, there was another knock in my window. I simply ignored it this time, though. I'm dreading going to sleep tonight. I think I'm going to install security cameras on my house soon. Either way, I'll give an update on what happens. I was 13 years old. My bedroom window faced the playground outside. It was a hot spring night with a light rain, so I had the window open, allowing me to hear the raindrops as well as a strange squeaking sound. It really started to get annoying, so I went to the window to see what it could be. There was someone sitting on the swing set. I nearly screamed but covered my mouth instead. What was really scary was that the swing was in the direct line of sight from my window, and the person on the swing was staring straight at my window. I could only hope they didn't see me. I was too scared to go across the house to my parents' room. Instead, all I really wanted to do was hide in my bed and hope they would go away. But the squeaking went on and on. I covered my ears, not only because I was scared, but also because of the annoyance of the sound. And finally, at last, the squeaking stopped. I gave it a few seconds before I quietly got out of bed and went back to the window. This time, I actually screamed. The person who was previously on the swing was now standing at most 10 feet from my window, looking in, close enough for me to make out his horrid face, with his eyes locked onto mine. But only for maybe a second or two, because I went straight to my parents' room, screaming for my dad the whole way. My dad looked out the window, then went outside. He came back in 5 minutes later and said there were boot marks under the swings where a patch of mud accumulated, but he couldn't find the person who made them. This was 100% the scariest moment of my life. When I was about 11, some friends and I were having a slumber party, and we all snuck out of the house in the middle of the night and went to a park about a half block away. We had been there at least an hour when I thought I saw a large figure about 100 feet away, lurking in the shadows under some trees. We all turned to look and stare at the shadow's direction for about 5 minutes, trying to make it out, right about when we decided we were seeing things. The figure started running at top speed towards us. We jumped up and ran back to the house as fast as we could go and locked the door. We could hear someone moving around the outside of the house, and then someone began tapping on the windows. We couldn't wake anyone up, since we would have to admit that we had snuck out. We spent the night huddled together in the middle of the living room. None of us slept that night.